Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. I'll tell you briefly one reason why I have not covered certain things that I haven't covered. And that's important. Some might say, well, this is Jet Black covering these things, but it's not really covering them. Um, First, I haven't made much mention of Rodney Hinton Jr. And his arrest for avenging the death of his son Ryan Hinton, and that is because one, I haven't seen any of the footage. Number two, apparently there's a witness that says that an old lady was driving. It wasn't Rodney. And number three, um, the facts speak so loudly that are established that really the sisters that love to say that black men don't avenge, now we're going to have to say that that they now are not going to be able to say this, unless it's proven that somebody else drove and not him. But one thing that has been shown is that Rodney Hinton Jr. does not fear them. Um, it's also a discussion about which I don't know enough yet to really say much. I'd like to know more, but I don't yet know enough to say, hey, was he in the son's life or not? Was he alienated by the mom or not? Then there is the issue of um, the other thing I've not covered, though I know something about it, and that is Trump's visit here. Apparently, he's here in Saudi. I haven't covered it because people aren't talking about it much, actually. Um, it will be discussed more later, but not right now. Whatever is agreed upon will be that which is later discussed. Um, I don't know if that deal with China was reached here or if it was reached somewhere else. Also, I didn't discuss those women in Morocco that had that tomato thrown at them. Um, at first, because I found out about it late, but the other reason is that I wanted to hear what you all knew and did not know at first before saying anything. I'm going to tell you Morocco was in Africa. By the same token, they don't realize they have a tendency to forget that it's in Africa. The other thing about Morocco was that um, it is liberal relatively, but they still consider certain things to be outright disrespectful. And they don't, they're used, especially in the bigger cities, they're used to black people. So it's not the sight of black people that ticks them off. It's the thought of being black or becoming black that scares them, but the sight of black people doesn't really tick them off. Um, the thing about Morocco is that they had a tomato and it was one tomato, and that tomato was a warning. That was just a warning to them. It was not intended to injure them. Um, it was a signal to them. It was to make them ask why the hell somebody would do this. And the lady, rightfully, the one that was filming, rightfully said it's probably because of how we're dressed. And that's exactly what the hell it was. It's a group of them dressed like that. And it could have been a black Moroccan that threw the tomato at them. People are not playing around like this. And so consequently, um, sisters really should take note and be careful when they travel, because there are people who know that black women are not any worse than anyone else, at least by birth, but they're going to look and say, oh, hell no. They still look and say, oh, hell no. You got a lot of Moroccans who aren't classified as black and don't think they should be, and they got black grandmoms that they loved very much. And when they see these black women dressing like this, it hurts their hearts. Sometimes, sometimes the Western black women or the Westernized black women get attacked because of the shame that they're bringing upon the non-Westernized black women that some of these folks knew. It ain't always hatred. It ain't always misogynoir. I don't know when it is and when it's not, but I do know that this tomato was a warning before they start throwing rocks. That's why it was just a tomato. It won't always be that way, but this time it was just a tomato, and that was very intentional. I also want the following to be, well, another thing I did not cover too much, but I will cover it now, and then I'm done. Sorry for yawning in your ear, folks. Um, Devin Campbell, I believe is his name. Dev Campbell was featured on Manosphere Highlights Daily from 3 days ago. He referred to himself as a neocon, not a tradcon, and he said that the tradcon days are not coming back, and that there are many conservatives are longing for the days of Leave It to Beaver, and he made reference to some other movie or some other series from a long time ago. I'm going to tell you guys this. The conservatives, he set up and told them the days of Leave It to Beaver are not coming back. Those days are gone. And the women of those days are gone. And what I'm going to tell you, black folks, what that means for you is that Wyatts are looking for those days to come back. And here's where the problem came in. The nostalgia that the elder whites felt when they looked at these old series, Leave It to Beaver, Dennis the Menace, uh, the nostalgia that the Wyatts felt at these times is nostalgia. And the problem is that in your memories, it's not raining. In your memories, it's not severely cold or severely hot, really uncomfortable. That's the thing about looking back fondly at the past. You're looking back at the fun parts. You're not looking at um, the whole picture. You don't even remember it all at once. We remember being kids and not being able to wait till we grew up, and now we look back on our childhoods and we think, well, man, it was much easier back then. In some ways it was, but in other ways it wasn't. But if you actually stop and think about it, it's completely different. I wouldn't go back to my childhood. If I had a chance, I would do certain things differently, but I wouldn't be willing to go back not knowing anything that I didn't know the first time, because then I'd do the same things. Shuck that fit. But many of us will gladly take another chance at childhood if we could get it. Movies have been made about this sort of thing. But Dev Campbell talks about what's not coming back. And Dev Campbell does not come from the generation that has a memory of the times in which these series were filmed. Those who have the memory don't have an accurate memory. And so they would sit up and look at this when Dev Campbell and my age group were little kids, and we would see some of these things too. And they would sit up and look at them and say, oh, those were the days. Those weren't the days. But they longed for those days because things were at least simpler, not necessarily better, but just simpler, and they were whiter. That's what that was about. Those days were just whiter. And so, with that being said, you got a lot of younger Wyatts today that walk around wanting to go back to those days. They don't know what those days were like. They just want to go back to what they think those days were, which is like the TV. And so they're willing to kill and die to go back to a time that never existed in the first mother cuss word place off screen. I shouldn't say they're willing to die, but they're willing to kill. That's what Charlottesville, Virginia was about. I still can't forget that level of hatred. Very polarizing. You want racial justice? Okay, well, you protest. You want white supremacy? Well, then you take your car and you drive it into the crowd and ram some people. You even assume, you get so caught up in it that you assume that the rest of Wyatt America is going to back you up no matter what. Dylan Roof thought that he was going to be broken out of prison in a race war. Nobody's even tried. He's just sitting there rotting in prison now. But they were thinking that they were going to go. See, they've romanticized conflict. That's the problem. They've romanticized even war. And they have a history of doing this. The Revolutionary War, they romanticized. When the Civil War was about to break out, Southerners romanticized that. They thought they were going to be picnicking. I kid you not. That's what they thought. That's what they expected. And then people started losing limbs violently, bleeding out to death, screaming for someone to attend to them, and then passing away shortly thereafter. The smell of freshly opened intestines of the living and the dying alike, making battlefields stinky long before decomposition would do it. It was brutal. And it was the first time that war was actually photographed and not just painted. And bodies, cadavers of the fallen soldiers were photographed. And that's when people started to say, man, this is horrible. And that went on for 4 years. But the South was unprepared. And even though they won a lot of the time, the South was still unprepared. And the reason the South was unprepared was because, frankly, both sides were unprepared, but the South was really unprepared because of the romanticization of, or the romanticism, I should say, of the Revolutionary War. And then World War One and World War Two was somewhat caught on film a little bit. And even then, each time Americans romanticized war until the Vietnam War, because it was caught not only live, but it was caught live in color and with sound. And it moved the country so much that they turned around and they even lost respect for their own soldiers because of what was going on there. It's never been just great. It's never been like that. Food rationing. They don't remember these things. They just remember that it was segregated and that we knew our place in their minds. That's what they remember. And so consequently, they want to go back to these times in which they cannot remember that we didn't know our place. And if we didn't, they could commit atrocities and get away with it. Dev Campbell said those days aren't coming back. I'm telling you, the days they want to go back to were never there. I just want us to remember that. I'm telling you that the days, we never had those days. I just want us to not forget. Those days were never there. We don't know what those days were like. We don't know what those days were because they didn't exist. We've always been oppressed and repressed. We've also always resisted in whatever ways we could pull it off, and sometimes even in ways we couldn't, paying the ultimate price. It's always been that. And every generation that came along of the Wyatts thought that the generations that came after them had gone too soft on the N words. You let your N words do this, that, and the other. Back in my day, we had them in chains and they were our property. And the ones talking that mess the most were the ones that were too poor to afford anybody. They were just overseers if they could get the job. That's all they were. So I'm telling you guys that the conservatives have made a mistake. The conservatives are talking about days that never existed. That's one of the reasons I haven't covered it too much. It's because I think we tend to forget it, but we know that. They don't. And oftentimes, when they really stop and think about what they do remember from those days, those lessons were hard for them because, when they were really little kids and all they knew was so and so was a man and so was a woman, and color was just a part of the description of them, and it didn't really mean much of anything else. And then they were told later that they weren't supposed to play with these kids and they weren't supposed to call her ma'am and they weren't supposed to call him sir or mister. When they were told these things as kids, it bothered a lot of them at that time. They couldn't understand what was the big deal. But as they got older, they adjusted to it. So, really, in their heart of hearts, they can remember learning some harsh lessons that they didn't want to learn because that was the way things were. There's a part of them that doesn't like that. It doesn't mean that they're going to tap into that to your benefit or to my benefit. It just means that there's a part of them that knows that was wrong and they can remember if they really think about it. When they had more sense in childhood than they've had in adulthood. But I also want to tell you guys too that I knew about this, but I just didn't cover it that much. Only because I didn't really think it was going to factor into a conversation until Dev Campbell said those days are not coming back. And I realized he didn't realize that those days never existed. And so if we black folks to talk about political conservatism and align ourselves with the GOP or the Democratic Plantation Party, either way is not in our best interest. Neither one is. Neither one's going to really help us out that much. We got a big old world we have to learn about. And we're learning, but we got to learn about more of it a lot faster, a lot more quickly. And we have an image that we're going to have to protect from people that don't have any skills and they just crash out. And they go from place to place and they do visa runs and border hoppings. And then they just, and maybe that's all they can do. But in the meantime, they got no skill. And instead of showing you their adjustments, they just crash out and try to get donations by entertaining you. And we have to protect our image from them. At the same time, that places men could have gone, whether they were looking for girlfriends or wives, I'd advocate wives that are girlfriends. Uh, but at the same time that men are going to places like this, these places are becoming ruined. Sosua, and then it was Colombia, and now it's Thailand, and we don't know what's next. My own girlfriend, meaning my wife, asked if a vacation to Thailand was a good idea. I told her that I was neutral about it. I told her that, you know, I'm not against it, but I want to be sure that we can go somewhere where I can get some good swimming in. And I want to see some of the Muslims in the South. And if that's cool with her, then let's go. But I was a little bit nervous. I admit I was kind of nervous because going to Thailand, as a couple is one thing, but I didn't want women trying to hit me up or anything like that. I know that there are certain streets in both Bangkok and in Pattaya and Phuket that you don't want to go on if you're not really about that life. And I'm not, and she's not. I know that they're there. But you know what now? From what people are saying, why not just go ahead and go? Because no matter where we wind up walking, no one's going to approach me. Not because she's there. They're not going to approach me because they're used to simps approaching them. You need a new phone, Ninja, right off the bat. Spend money on me. No coffee dates. Okay. Is it because you're chaste or is it because you saw somebody else say that? But if they're on that type of time, then they're not going to say anything to me. And therefore, hey, yeah, my wife and I can go anywhere. We can walk anywhere. Because ain't nobody going to approach me and get me into no kind of trouble. I probably wouldn't even know that I was walking in one of those areas because we'll be out and about in the daytime. But that's not necessarily a great thing for you in terms of just your overall reception and how you're being treated. It's not because I want you to fornicate easily, but because in a market like that, even if it comes down to you just getting married, you're going to face all kind of problems and difficulty because you're still expected to date before you marry. And to date, yeah, you got to go through the same attitude now. And I covered that because I found out about it. And I know that's relevant to you. And so those days are gone. They ain't coming back. It's too late now. Whatever part of Thailand has gotten to be the way that Raul was talking about, it's over. It's to the point we don't even know how to stop the spread of these things once we find out that a particular city in a place has gotten that bad. We realize that and we don't know what to do to stop it from going to another place. We got no clue. Like what are we going to do to put an end to that? We don't know what to do. We got no clue. So you know what? This place falls, and then that place falls, and then that place falls, and then that place falls, and then before you know it, the whole country is a no-go zone if you're looking to do anything other than just simp. Because those days are gone, which shows that they were barely there to begin with. So a lot of times when I don't cover certain things, it's just based on them not being conversations at all. And one day something happens and it exposes a flaw in somebody's logic or just a crack in their memory, which we all have, a gap in their memory. And I realize that I have to bring it to somebody's attention. And that's why it is that I cover what I cover and I don't cover what I don't. But I'm open to suggestion though. And then sometimes there are things I only cover on the Buy Me a Coffee channel, and that's it. And story time is coming up again. I got 72 confessions there. I got story time. And I'm about to give another story time in the Dr. Blease series, because that's how they pronounce Dr. Please. That's next. I hope this explains it and clears it up for you. Thank you for listening as always. Black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction of judgment day. Thank you for flying with us here on Jet Black Air with a phrase Jet Black's also a verb. Keep Jet Black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.